Kehaulani Kauanui is an associate professor of anthropology and American studies at Wesleyan University, where she teaches U.S. racial formations, native sovereignty politics, U.S. colonialism in the Pacific Islands, nationalism and gender. She earned her PhD in the program of History of Consciousness at the University of California, Santa Cruz, which is actually one of the first places I met her, both in Hawaii and at UC Santa Cruz. She is the author of the recently published Hawaiian Blood, Colonialism and the Politics of Indigeneity and Sovereignty, Duke University Press, 2008. Currently, she is working on her second book entitled Thy Kingdom Come, which is a critical study on gender and sexual politics vis-a-vis state-centered Hawaiian nationalism and the disavowal of Hawaiian indigeneity. She is also the producer and host of a radio program, Indigenous Politics, from native New England and beyond on WESU Middletown, Connecticut, which is syndicated on 5 stations across 7 states through the Pacifica Radio Network. She was part of the founding steering committee for the Native American Indigenous Studies Association, established in 2008, and is currently a council member serving a 3-year term. And this is what I'll say about Kehau. I've appeared with her on 3 or 4 different panels, I think, in our life, and one that I missed because I simply couldn't get away that I will always regret. But these panels always, what always struck me about you is that you always came at these difficult political discussions from a really principled point of view, and that is the perspective of ancestry. Our people, wherever they are, wherever they live in this place, the connections that they have to our homeland. I'm really happy to have you here. Kehaulani Kauanui.
Aloha kako, Felina kako. It's so wonderful to be here. Mahalo for the introduction. I'm really glad to participate in this event, and I'm really happy to be back in the homeland. And I want to also thank you, Arnie, for bringing me here, and also for Maivan for encouraging my participation on this panel. It feels really good to be back, and I feel privileged to take part in this public discussion. I think it's really important for us to, I feel from afar, sort of my critical perspective from a distance is that we're at a real critical impasse in terms of our independence nationalist struggle, and I hope that what I have to say is constructive in terms of furthering that political commitment that I have to restoring Hawaiian nationhood. I want to also acknowledge my auntie Puanani Rogers, who's in the audience. It's really good to have somebody from my ohana here who is also really one of my key figures who inspires me all the time with her relentless dedication to our people at every single level. Somebody mentioned, Papa Soli mentioned getting arrested at PMRF. She's going to meetings around the clock trying to protect our sacred sites on Kauai, you name it, she's there. And it's Auntie Nani who largely drew me into the movement nearly 20 years ago. So I just want to acknowledge that. A lot of people say, this is Auntie Nani, this is my Auntie Nani Pilikoko, mahalo. I'll share her. I also just want to acknowledge all the veteran warriors who are here. I really look to you. I've learned a lot from you since I was an undergrad, and I really respect you being here at this event today and taking part and also educating the next generation. I want to also just mention before I talk about these 3 legal strategies under international law, Terry Kehaulani mentioned Kawaipuna Pregene, and I got real heavy because I also was at the Hawaii People's Tribunal, and but I had met him much earlier. I started my higher education path at community college because I was not college prepped, and I went to community college in Southern California where I was born and raised at Irvine Valley College, and it took me 3 years to get through before I had enough transfer credits to get to UC Berkeley, and Berkeley took me another 3 years because I was working my way through school and put myself through school. And it was fall of 1989 when I went to UC Berkeley, and I was so excited to be there because I was living in Southern California in Orange County, and this was during the Reagan era, and we called it Living Behind the Orange Curtain. And I just wanted to get to the Bay Area so bad, just to breathe. But it was in the fall of 1989, I was taking an ethnic studies course at UC Berkeley, and Kawaipuna Prijin was one of the guest speakers, and he was based at the International Indian Treaty Council, and I just had chicken skin the entire time he was talking. Again, this is fall 1989, this is exactly 20 years ago. And I went up afterward, and I was kind of hila-hila, and I was sheepish, and I introduced myself to him, and he just embraced me, and he said, "You're living here, you need to support the people of this land." And he just looked me right in the eye, and that has always stuck with me. And I've learned that from Hawaiian elders all through the West Coast. I mean, people say you grew up away from Hawaii. I grew up with Hawaiians too, outside of Hawaii. Not just my father, right? So in the Bay Area, I was part of a large Hawaiian community, and we had the Hawaiian Nation Information Group that I helped to co-found in 1990, and that's how I got to know some of the veteran warriors, is through that educational process of bringing the mana'o from the islands to our people in the Bay Area in particular. But I just wanted to acknowledge that Kawaipuna Prijin, even though I didn't know him well, he had a very profound effect on me. And I also acknowledge that because it was that principle of recognizing whose land we're on wherever we go, even if we're just traveling or if we're dwelling in another place. And I mention that because, as John introduced, I have a radio show called Indigenous Politics from Native New England and Beyond, and I do teach Native sovereignty politics, and I mean Native American sovereignty politics. And people say, "Oh, she must be confused, we're not Native American." It's like, no, I study Native America too. That's another area of interest. And to me, I can't critique things like the Akaka Bill without an understanding of US federal policy on tribal nations. I'm not confused about who I am. I'm not confused about our national claims. I think it's really important. Just like I studied in Aotearoa and Maori studies for a year and a half, I didn't think I was Maori because I went to Maori studies. So why do people think I'm trying to force Kanaka Maoli into a Native American category? I do work with Native communities because I live in Native America, okay? The other thing that I want to acknowledge is that that same semester in 1989, 3 people from the Pele Defense Fund came to give a talk on campus, and that included Lehua Lopez, Palikapu Dedman, and Emmett Aluli. And so meeting them literally within weeks of having met Palikapu Dedman just really opened my eyes to the struggle, because I would go home to Anahola, Kauai, where my father was raised on Hawaiian homelands, but I didn't know there was a struggle going on until I met Kawaipuna and Lehua and Emmett and Palikapu. The following spring in 1990, I heard Haunani K. Trask give a talk at Stanford that blew my mind. And then that fall, or rather that summer, I went home to Anahola for a family reunion and reconnected with Auntie Nani. And she came up and said, she had a cute hot pink baseball cap on, and she came over and she said, "I hear you're at Berkeley. It's real radical there, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, I love it." And she said, "You know about our movement?" I was like, "I'm learning about it. I want to know." And she's like, "Check out my bag." And she had a side bag that had just binders and binders and folders and folders. I don't know if you remember, this is at Lidgate Park in the fall of 1990. And she basically drew me into the movement. And I've been, from my own particular distance and my own particular way, part of the movement in one way or another since that time. And I just want to acknowledge that as part of my own political mo'okuahau, if you will. Now, what I want to do is, I was going to start with Palestine and the Israeli occupation, but Keanu said something that I was so glad about. I think I have to start with that. And I hope that everyone heard it. It's on camera. I've got it on my audio recorder. Keanu Sai said, "We were treated as a colony." Okay? Let us keep that in mind when our people try and talk about their experiences, everyday experiences living under colonialism.